and welcome to Veterans of the Valley. I'm Tom Turbyville. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Bill Hamilton. There is a good chance that a lot of you already know this outgoing gentleman of the Brazos Valley. Bill is a veteran, did not serve in any overseas combat, but the battles he's fought since January of 1981, well, that is one that he wins every day. He's a volunteer, a proud member, and assistant chaplain of Disabled Americans Veterans. He sings and writes poems, and you'll soon understand how he turned a personal nightmare into hope and faith. It's my pleasure to welcome Sergeant Bill Hamilton to Veterans of the Valley. Bill, it is indeed a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you.
Let's start off with what we alluded to right there. It was, I think we determined 1981, January of 1981. It was Super Bowl Sunday. You were 33 years old. Talk about what happened to you that day.
I was sitting home with the family watching the Super Bowl, a regular Sunday afternoon. I started having a bad headache, and all of a sudden I went into a grand mal seizure and fell on the floor.
Yes, sir.
The next thing I knew, it was 2 months later, after brain surgery, and the doctor was telling me I'd just come out of a 2-month coma after they had found out that I had contracted a viral encephalitis.
Yes, sir.
And they had to do emergency brain surgery on me to remove my right temporal brain lobe. And since that time, it's just been one rehabilitation after another. I finished all the rehabilitations quite a few years ago, and I've been able to live on my own in a one-bedroom apartment with my little dog Bella. And I do a lot of volunteer work, which I love dearly.
All right.
Working with children and working with disabled veterans.
Your life before that 2 months and your life after that month, those 2 months were over. Besides the grand mal seizure that caused your seizure and caused your brain injury, there were a lot of other personal changes in your life when you came out 2 months later. And I know you don't mind talking about that with your family.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, my parents, when they came up to see me in recovery room, I asked my mother and dad where my wife and my children were. And mother said, well, Judy's no longer here. She divorced you and married a man in the Army, and they moved to Germany with Brad and Heather.
My goodness.
So that was another kick. And I spent a lot of time trying to get over that, too.
Yes, sir.
But I have since, and I date now. When I find a lady that's, I believe in women's liberation because they have to come by to pick me up. I can't drive, so I believe in that.
You're a big believer.
I'm a big believer in women's liberation, but I go out and dance at the Hall of Shame, the Hall of Fame.
I wanted to set the scene there and to show people about what you have overcome, and we'll talk more about that later. But let's go early in your life. You grew up in Abilene, and sort of take us from there and sort of your path to the military and on up through there.
All right. I graduated Abilene High School in 1966 at the age of 19. I immediately started at McMurray College, which was a Methodist affiliated college there in Abilene. I majored in pre-med. I wanted all my life, since I was a little child, to be a doctor.
Right.
I majored in pre-med, and I started working at Hendricks Memorial Hospital as a respiratory therapy technician. And I fell head over heels in love with that career.
Yes, sir.
And it's a good thing because my very first exam in chemistry, I made the biggest, most beautiful, brilliant colored red F. And I said, well, I can't be a doctor and flunk chemistry. So all my hopes and dreams were just dispersed. But thankfully, I fell in love with respiratory therapy. At that time, it was called inhalation therapy.
Yes, sir.
And I started concentrating on that, and that's what I made my life to do, my vocation to do.
You moved to Dallas, enrolled at El Centro College there.
Yeah.
There was a 2-year program there that you were able to
my
further your
registry
education.
program.
Right.
And while I was there, I worked at Children's Medical Center as a senior respiratory therapist, a pediatric respiratory therapist.
Right.
And I was the educational director of the department.
Right, right. Son was born in 1971, in January of 1971.
Yeah, in Dallas, and I've always called him a little Dallas cowboy.
Uh-huh. In Dallas. Your draft status changed from deferred to 1A at the time, and you made a decision at that time not to go to Vietnam, but you wanted to serve in another capacity, and that's with your medical skills,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Talk about that.
I got my 1A classification. I just about died because I didn't really want to go to Vietnam. I'm not a protester, but I had a wife and a child, and I felt my time would be better there with them at that particular time.
Right.
So I joined the United States Air Force, and after I had gone through my physical examination, all the paperwork at the draft board, I was driving home, and I drove up into my driveway. I saw a uniformed officer knocking on my front door. I jumped out of the car and I said, "Sir, could I help you?" He says, "Are you Robert William Hamilton?" I knew I was in trouble then because people used to call me Bill. I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "I have your draft notice." I said, "Oops." So I took that draft notice, went right back down to the draft board, walked in to Sergeant Davis. I'll never forget his name. I said, "Sergeant Davis, I got my draft board." He said, "We finally got you, didn't we, Hamilton?" I said, "You sure did," and I tore it in half. He said, "Hey, that's Leavenworth for you, fella." He said, I reached in my other pocket and says, "Here's my induction papers. I have joined the United States Air Force." Boy, was he mad. He was mad at me doing that. But I was the property of the United States Air Force.
After you're inducted, it's okay to rip up your draft notice,
Yeah,
right?
afterwards,
You were just giving him a hard time.
Yeah.
You went to Scott Air Force Base
Yes.
in Illinois,
Yeah,
and not only did you serve your entire time in the military there, but you also went to school, right, at
Yes,
Southern Illinois University.
Yeah, Scott Air Force Base at that time was the MAC headquarters, Military Airlift Command.
Right.
And I was assigned to the Cardiopulmonary Phase 2 Technology School as an instructor in respiratory therapy in that school. Mm-hmm. And I started going to Southern Illinois University and majored in occupational education.
Yes, sir.
I got my bachelor's degree. About the same time, my second child, my daughter, Heather, was born on June 23rd. I've always called her my little Yankee. Mm-hmm. She's the only Hamilton that has ever been born outside of Texas.
Yes, sir.
And I graduated from Southern Illinois University about a year before I got out of the service with a bachelor's degree in occupational education and a master's degree in counseling education. Mm-hmm. And after my honorable discharge, May 1st, 1971, I moved back to San Antonio. Had to do that because it took me 4 years to try to teach those Illinoisans how to talk Texan. I couldn't do it, so I got discouraged. I had to move back to where people talk right.
Yeah, you had been to San Antonio before because after you joined the Air Force in '71, you did basic at Lackland Air Force Base, right?
Yes, I did.
Right, so you knew San Antonio. So it was in San Antonio, you were there, you were a buck sergeant, and you moved there, and then you went into the school at St. Philip's, sort of talk about, there was a therapy school that you got a job, and it was a pretty good job with a pretty good salary for a young man, right?
About 4 or 5 months before I knew I was due to be discharged, I started writing colleges all over the state of Texas, asking if they were interested in starting a respiratory therapy certification program, a 1-year or 2-year program. And about, I guess, 2 or 3 weeks before my due date for discharge came up, I got a letter back from St. Philip's College in San Antonio, Texas, telling me that they had been looking for a person to be the chairman of a new 1-year respiratory therapy certification program, starting pay at $40,000, and they were very interested in talking to me. So I took that letter down to my base commander, and I said, "Sir, I'm gone. I am not going to re-enlist." He wanted me to re-enlist. Well, I said, I'm going to take my discharge. I'm going to move to San Antonio. They're going to pay me $40,000 to do that. He says, "Well, good luck to you, Sergeant, because we can't match that pay."
You were 28 years old, $40,000, and your wife at the time also had got a pretty good job too.
When we got to San Antonio, my wife was a registered ultrasound technician, and she got a job with a large radiology firm at another $38,000 a year. So we were both under 30 years old and making over $70,000 a year. So we bought us a great big house, too big for 2 people, for 4 of us now.
Right.
My wife and my 2 children. A great big ski boat, fancy cars, and just started living it up, living that American dream.
Yes, sir.
We went ballistic with the money we were making.
And then everything changed on that Super Bowl Sunday for you.
Yeah, I was
sure
watching the Super Bowl game,
Yeah.
and I started feeling bad. I had my very first grand mal seizure.
Right.
I fell out on the floor, and my son was the first to see me. And it scared him to death. He went and called his mother, and she came in, and she sent Brad next door to get a neighbor. He came over, the neighbor came over and called for 911, got an ambulance out there. The next thing I knew, I woke up. It was in March of '81. The doctors were telling me I had just come out of a 2-month coma after they had to do emergency brain surgery to remove my right temporal brain lobe because they found out I had contracted a rare viral encephalitis.
I want to go backtrack because there's a part of your military career that I want you to talk about when you were at Scott Air Force Base. And as we said, you didn't serve in a combat role in any foreign country, but you did go to Vietnam on a few occasions directly from Scott Air Force Base. Talk about that, and I believe the first time you went, you thought you were just going to be gone for a few hours.
Yes,
right?
I got an order. That morning, I was sitting at the breakfast table with our children and my wife. The phone rang. My wife answered the phone. She said, "Bill, it's Colonel Griggs wants to talk to you." Well, I instantly stood at attention in my own home and went over the phone. I said, "Sir, yes, sir." He says, "Sergeant Hamilton, we need you at the check in at the base ASAP. We've got a mission for you." So I said, "Yes, sir." So I told my wife and children I'm going to go, and they got a mission for me to go pick up a person that needs ventilatory support, and I'll be back sometime this afternoon. So I thought. Well, I got to the base. They herded me into the big military aircraft, and we took off. About 40 minutes to an hour into the flight, the pilot came over the intercom. Said, "Welcome aboard, gentlemen. Our next stop, Saigon, Vietnam." I just about died. I said, "What am I going to do? I just told my kids and everything I'd be back this afternoon." Well, what those people had planned for me at the base was a test run to see how I was going to handle that. Because I had teased them and talked to them all the time that when am I going to get to go on the next airvac flight to pick up a disabled or a veteran. They said, "We'll let you know, Sergeant, we'll let you know." I just kept bothering them. Well, they made a great big 2-hour circle. And the captain came on the intercom and says, "Okay, gentlemen, we're just about to ready to land. Fasten your seatbelts." I said, "Boy, that's a fast trip from Scott Air Force Base, Illinois to Saigon, Vietnam, in that amount of time. They've got some powerful airplanes nowadays." We landed, and I started looking around. I said, "Man, this looks awful familiar." We landed at the Scott Air Force Base. I got out, went back up to my command post, opened the door, and there my OIC, NCOIC, and all the guys I work with just dying laughing. They thought that they had a big joke. "Well, did you enjoy your trip to Vietnam, Sergeant Hamilton?" I was so angry. If I hadn't been a good Christian, I'd have murdered every one of them.
But now, eventually, I believe you told me you did actually.
Yes, yes,
go.
I
You did
went,
take the whole trip, and
I didn't hate to take the whole trip.
right, 18-hour trip, I believe you
Yes,
said, right?
and pick up wounded U.S. soldiers, military, Marine, Air Force, and Navy that were required ventilatory assistant, iron lung or volume ventilators.
Right.
And I picked up them and brought them back to Scott Air Force Base, where they were dispensed to some other civilian hospital.
Bill, there's a very special story that you told me about when you were in the coma for 2 months, and a vision that you had.
Yeah.
And I want you to tell it to our audience the same way you told me.
All right. At one point in time, I found myself in the most beautiful place I had ever seen in my life. Blue, crystal blue skies above me. The temperature was absolutely divine. There was white, puffy clouds about waist deep that I was walking through. And I was walking towards a person faced away from me in a scarlet white robe, hair about mid shoulder. I knew I had to touch this person to live. I don't know why, but I had to. Way off in the distance, it seemed like the Norman Tabernacle Choir were singing, "Shall We Gather at the River?" I kept walking and stumbling and falling, getting back up, walking, stumbling and falling. And finally, I got close enough to the back of this person to reach up and touch his shoulder. Just as I was reaching up to touch his shoulder, he turned around and grabbed my hand. I fell on my knees instantly and said, "God, please don't let me die. I have 2 young children I want to see grow." He pulled my hand and said, "Stand on your feet, my son. You will not die. I have a purpose for your life. I want you to go now, Bill, and write me a book. Call your book The Long Road Back. Tie your story into my Bible scriptures so it'll be an inspiration to other people on their long road back too, to my son Jesus. Go now, Bill, and write your book." And that is the time that I came out of the coma.
And you're still writing the book.
I'm still working on it. Yeah.
You're working on it. Yeah. It's still a work in progress.
It is.
You, as we alluded to earlier, you sing, you write poetry.
Yes.
You brought a few of your short poems. I'd like for you to share them with us. Can you do that?
All right.
If these are some of the poems, and these are inspirational and religious poems. Go ahead.
This is the prayer poem that I wrote a few years ago, and I've put it to music, and I sing it play with my guitar, but it goes like this. It's, here I am, O Lord, again on bended knee. I come to you, my Lord, forgive me, please, for I have sinned another day. Gee, it's hard to make it your way, but I know if I pray, you'll help me make it another day. In Jesus' name.
And you have a Christmas gift poem also.
Yes.
Do that one?
The first Christmas given to mankind was a babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, laying in a manger so small, but he was the greatest gift of them all. God gave us his son so small, he came to free us from death's cold grip and provide us a way for eternal life, away from the sin of man and away from fear. How small he was, laying in a manger, wrapped in swaddling clothes, but he will someday be dressed in a golden robe with the same robe what waits for you and me if we believe in Jesus Christ.
That's fantastic. And these are just a few of the samples of the things that you've written. I know you have a whole computer full of them, right?
I looked through them, but it seemed like I'm missing some of them. So I don't know. I'm going to have to start rewriting some more of them.
And you take established poems and sometimes change the words to them a little bit. Can you do Humpty Dumpty for us? You do that for some kids?
Yeah. Well, this has come about with my volunteer work at Fannin Elementary School.
Right, you're a host volunteer.
And a host reading volunteer.
Right.
The little boy asked me if I had any poems or rhymes or riddle I've written. I said, yes. I asked him a question. I said, how many have heard the poem of Humpty Dumpty? And all these little hands go up. I said, well, let me see if you heard it this way. Humpty Dumpty really sat up in a tree. But you know that turkey fell off backwards and broke his left knee. Then he jumped back up and said, tee-hee-hee. You can't hurt Humpty Dumpty. I'm a poet, and I know it. My feet show it. They're Longfellows. And the little boy in the back, he said, Mr. Bill, who's that Longfellow dude is? I said, you mean who is Longfellow? He said, yeah, who that dude is? I said, he's a poet. You'll learn about him in high school. He said, well, did he have big feet? I said, it's about like that. And the teacher said, Mr. Bill, you're going to blow their mind. I said, well, better in here in the classroom than out there on the street.
You're a host volunteer. You also are the assistant chaplain. You were the chaplain. You're assistant chaplain of the Disabled American Veterans. And I want you to talk about that organization because we haven't had near enough chances on Veterans of the Valley to talk about the DAV and the chapter here locally. Talk about the Disabled American Veterans and your membership and some of the things that you all do.
All right. I joined the chapter shortly after I moved down here to live with my mother and dad, which were elderly at the time. And I was bored stiff. I didn't have anything to do. I couldn't drive. I didn't know anybody. So Mother and Dad suggested I try to locate someone that might be in charge of one of the veterans organizations, since I was a veteran.
Right.
So I started looking around, and I contacted a man by the name of Floyd D. Wells. Found out he was the commander and started the chapter 200 of the Disabled American Veterans about 30 years ago. So I got a hold of Floyd, and we made a contact to meet, and I joined the chapter right off the bat. And our chapter is made up of about 200 or 300 disabled vets. We have a ladies' auxiliary that is very functional when we have parties and gatherings. They make cookies and cakes and stuff like that for our chapter meetings. We meet once a month for our chapter meeting, business meeting. A week before that, we have an executive meeting, which I'm part of, and we plan the meetings and the things that we're going to be doing. We have various fundraisers to raise funds for the chapter because all our members are disabled and they're getting up in years. Some we have through World War II, mostly Korean, Vietnam era. So they're not making an abundance of money. So we have to raise money for our chapter. Mm-hmm. We have in the past going to Waco VA Hospital, which is a psychiatric hospital of the Veterans Administration. Yes, sir. Many people don't like to go up there because of it being a psychiatric hospital, but we found those people, they need love and hope too. So we go up there as a chapter. Our Ladies Auxiliary make cookies and cakes and punch, and we have a big party for them, and they just love it, sitting around talking old times, and it gets them out of their shell so they can express themselves and just be with other friendly comrades.
Right, right. It's a wonderful organization, and I know that you all do a lot of volunteer work.
Enjoy it.
And we also mentioned that you were a host volunteer, which is the Bryan ISD volunteer program.
A lot of people may not know what HOST means.
Right.
HOST stands for Help One Student to Succeed. Mm-hmm. We work one-on-one with a student that's having trouble with reading or that's disabled or handicapped, and they have planned activities each day for the children to go through. It's just an hour once a week that I spend with them, but that is an hour in heaven because I just love it. And the children have been very instrumental in giving this old man some neat ideas of children's story titles to write. Mm-hmm. I write children's stories, but it's been a long time since I've been a kid. And they give me some neat ideas about what they wanted. You know, one little boy says, "Why don't you talk about the monster that ate Manhattan?" I said, "Oh, I bet he had a tummy ache."
HOST is a wonderful program. My wife is a HOST volunteer, and she's very proud to be one. It goes on and on, the things that you do. You're also a member of the Silver Tongue Toastmasters. Talk about that group.
Yes, the Silver Tongue Toastmasters, I've been a member for about 10 or more years. We give prepared speeches or extemporaneous speeches. If you're not prepared for a speech, you better be prepared to do something because sometimes the Toastmaster will call on you. Mr. So-and-so or Miss So-and-so, would you come up and give a speech, a 3-minute speech on something or other? He may call out something. The part of the meeting that I really enjoy the most is an area called table topics. Mm-hmm. The table topic master will reach in his bag and pull up something. It may be something you're very familiar with. It may be something you've never seen in your life. Right. And you have to give a 1 to 2 minute speech on it. Mm-hmm. The last time, one time I went up there, I won best table topics when he pulled up this thing I had never seen in my life. I got up there with, I said, well, obviously, folks, this is one of those hoochie jiggers. Now, hoochie jigger, by definition, is something in between a whatchamacallit and a doodad. But don't confuse it with a thingamajig or gizmo, because they're all a little bit different. But I went on and on and on and met my 1 or 2 minute speech and won best table topics for that evening. It's a lot of fun.
I can imagine that you did. As I'm going through my notes, I wanted to backtrack because I know that we mentioned the city of Houston, and you spent some time in Houston after your seizure. And it was something that was tough to go through, but it's something that really sort of saved your life too. It was a reentry program in Houston that taught you to live independently. Talk a little bit about that.
It was called Project Reentry at Del Oro, PRE. Mm-hmm. It was headed up by Mary Helen Hayden, a PhD neuropsychologist, and Nancy Leslie, practicing psychologist here in town. Mm-hmm. It was a 1-year program. The main thing they taught me was, or worked with me on, was independent living. They knew I wanted to live by myself. So they taught me how to live by myself, and that was a godsend because without the program, I would have definitely been in a rest home.
Yes, sir.
Because I couldn't take care of myself. When I first came out of that coma, I didn't remember how to tie shoes, dress myself properly, cook food. So they taught me all that stuff, and then I spent 1 year there, and it was a very good experience. Mm-hmm. I have a habit, and still a bad habit of myself, of getting lost without a short-term memory and no peripheral vision. Well, I can be walking and I'll get lost real quick.
Yes, sir.
So one day I went out walking in Houston, the big, humongous city of Houston, remembering what my mother and dad told me that Bill, people in Houston may not be as friendly as little Brian, so be careful what you do and what you say. So I was walking down the sidewalk, and this lady on the other side of the street was walking down the other way. And of course, old Bill, what does he do? I said, hello there. She goes, come here. So I walked across the street. She goes, where are you going, big boy? I said, I'm trying to find my way home. She says, where do you live? And I gave her the address. She goes, oh, that's about 5 miles from here. She said, why don't you come up and stay with me tonight, big boy? Well, it dawned on me. The good Lord spoke to me and said, Bill, you're talking to one of those
I understand.
ladies of the evening. And so I booked myself back on home. Luckily, the good Lord helped me find my way back home. I don't know how, but I found my way back home.
Bill, we just have a couple of minutes left. I want you to talk about your family. You have a son and a daughter-in-law in Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Yes,
Is that right?
Yeah.
And a daughter and a son-in-law who are in Abilene, the
Yes.
town you grew up. And talk about what they're doing. I think
Yeah,
it's interesting.
they're both, Heather and John are both ordained Methodist ministers. And they're pastoring the church that I was baptized in as an infant and married in 1969. They're pastoring that church.
In the same church that you
I
grew up in.
Yes.
And they're ordained. And you have 4 grandchildren and 1 on the way, is that right?
Yes, I've got 4 grandchildren, 1 on the way, and they're all boys, and I've got another boy on the way. And I asked my son, Brad, I said, when are you and Michelle going to have me a granddaughter? He goes, not us, Dad. We're finished having babies. I said, oh, did you have a vasectomy? And she have her tubes tied? He goes, no, Dad. I did something a lot better and a lot cheaper. I said, you didn't move out, did you? He said, no. I said, what did you do? He said, I built bunk beds. So I'm still waiting for a granddaughter.
That's fantastic. And I know that they're very, very proud of you. And we're very proud
They
of
put up with a lot.
That's right.
Trying to
And I know you
rehabilitate
have
Dad.
a sister in town,
Yes,
Sylvia
Sylvia
Colwell.
Caldwell, retired teacher from Henderson Elementary School.
Right, and you have a couple of nephews, Rick and Robbie, that are in town.
Rick and Robbie Caldwell.
So a lot of people are taking care of you, and you take care of a lot of people.
Oh yeah, thank God I've got my family here, and I got a brother here, and he lives out by the Nansby Power Plant.
Right.
He's a home redecorator, painter.
Right. Bill, we're out of time, but thank you very, very much. Appreciate
Enjoy
everything
it,
that you do,
Tom.
and thank you for your volunteer work.
Enjoy it.
Thank
Tom.
you, Bill. How to take a bad hand dealt and still win a jackpot. No, Sergeant Bill Hamilton did not carry a weapon in combat, but he nonetheless served with his medical skills and still serves in what I believe is the most honorable way as a volunteer of his time to help others. Thank you, Bill Hamilton, for your service and a life lesson well learned. I'm Tom Turbeville. Join us next time on Veterans of the Valley.